Waitress finds her mother's photo in billionaire's wall of the truth, leaves her in tears. Why would a reclusive billionaire carry a decades-old photo of a waitress's deceased mother in his wallet? Amara just wanted to understand the connection, but the truly shocking twist reveals a conspiracy of stolen research, betrayal, and a dark truth behind her mother's accidental death, a truth someone is still willing to kill for. Subscribe, like, and listen now to uncover the heartbreaking secret. The smell of stale coffee and fried oysters hung heavy in the humid New Orleans air as Amara Tate wiped down the last counter at Mama Rosie's diner. Closing time. Just one customer remained, a man nursing a lukewarm coffee at the corner booth, seemingly lost in thought. He was older, dressed and quiet, expensive clothes that looked out of place amidst the diner's worn vinyl and checkered floors. As Amara approached to clear his cup, he fumbled for his wallet. It slipped from his grasp, hitting the linoleum with a soft thud. Cards spilled partially out, along with something else, a small, laminated photograph, aged and softened at the edges. It landed face up. Amara's breath hitched. Her heart hammered against her ribs. Staring up at her from the worn floor was the smiling face of her mother, Evelyn Tate, captured in a moment from long ago, wearing the familiar silver locket Amara herself now wore every day. Time seemed to warp. The diner's gentle hum faded. It was her photo, the exact one tucked away in Amara's own keepsake box. She reached down, her hand trembling, fingers brushing the cool laminate before the man snatched it back, stuffing it hastily into his wallet along with the scattered cards. His face, moments before serene, was now pale, startled. "Sorry," he muttered, avoiding her eyes. "That photo," Amara whispered, her voice barely audible. She swallowed, trying to find her breath. "That's my mother, Evelyn Tate. Where did you get that?" The man looked up, his eyes deep-set and shadowed, widening slightly before hardening. "You're mistaken, young lady," he said, his voice regaining a measure of composure, though still strained. "Just an old picture. Resembles someone, perhaps." He dropped a $20 bill on the counter, far too much for a single coffee. "Keep the change." He turned to leave, moving quickly towards the door. "No!" Amara's voice found its strength, sharp with disbelief and a sudden, desperate need for answers. She stepped forward, blocking his path instinctively. "It is her. I know that photo. I have the same one. Please, who are you? How did you know my mother?" He stopped, his back to her, hand on the door handle. The silence stretched, thick with unspoken history. He didn't turn around, but his shoulders sagged almost imperceptibly before he pushed the door open and disappeared into the thick, late spring night, leaving Amara standing alone in the empty diner, the ghost of her mother's smile burning behind her eyes, and 1,000 questions exploding in her heart. Amara Tate's world, until that moment, had been defined by resilience and routine. At 24, she navigated life with a determined optimism that sometimes felt like defiance against the low-simmering grief she carried. Her days were spent waitressing at Mama Rosie's Diner, a beloved neighborhood joint tucked away in a quieter street near New Orleans Garden District. It was honest work, paying the bills for her small, book-filled apartment, but it wasn't her dream. Her real passion unfolded late at night, fueled by strong chicory coffee, hunched over her secondhand laptop. Amara was a voracious learner, meticulously working her way through online courses in data analysis and environmental science, patching together an education the loss of her mother had derailed years ago. Evelyn Tate, a brilliant chemical engineer with a warm laugh and an endlessly curious mind, had been Amara's entire world until she was 10. Then came the sudden, brutal finality of a car accident on a rain-slicked highway ruled accidental, case closed, leaving a 10-year-old Amara adrift, eventually landing in the foster care system before aging out on her own. Her most treasured possession was a small, worn wooden box containing the remnants of her mother's life. A few faded photographs, including the twin of the one the stranger dropped, Evelyn's tarnished silver locket necklace, which Amara now wore, a handful of technical papers Amara didn't fully understand, and a bundle of letters tied with a faded ribbon. These artifacts were her only tangible connection to the woman who had encouraged her curiosity and believed in her potential. Amara's life in New Orleans was modest but full. She had regulars at the diner she cared about, a few close friends, a love for the city's vibrant music scene and unique culture. The humid air, the scent of jasmine and jambalaya, the rhythm of jazz spilling from open doorways. It was home, a place she'd carved out for herself through sheer grit. Yet, there was always an underlying question, a sense of incompleteness surrounding her mother's death. Evelyn had been so vibrant, so careful. An accident had always felt dissonant. But with no evidence, no leads, and no resources, Amara had tucked those doubts away, focusing on survival and self-improvement. She dreamt of a future beyond waiting tables, perhaps working in environmental advocacy or sustainable technology, field her mother had been passionate about. She held on to the belief that knowledge was power, that education could lift her out of her circumstances, a creed inherited from Evelyn. She was resourceful, observant, and possessed an analytical mind that could piece together disparate information, whether it was juggling complex orders during the lunch rush or deciphering dense academic texts online. She knew nothing of billionaires or the cutthroat world of corporate energy. Her world was one of sticky counters, friendly banter, late-night study sessions, and the quiet, persistent ache of missing her mother. The appearance of the wealthy stranger and the impossible photograph shattered the fragile peace of that world, dredging up old grief and igniting a spark of dangerous curiosity she couldn't ignore. The meticulously ordered world she'd built for herself felt suddenly precarious, haunted by a past she realized she knew nothing about. The inciting incident was the collision of past and present on the worn linoleum floor of Mama Rosie's diner. The stranger's fumbled wallet, the fluttering photograph revealing Evelyn Tate's face, it was a lightning strike that illuminated the dark corners of Amara's history. After the man's abrupt departure, Amara stood frozen for long moments, the $20 bill lying accusingly on the counter. Her mind reeled. It wasn't just a photo of her mother. It was the photo, the one from the family picnic shortly before she died, Evelyn's smile wide and genuine. Wearing the locket, Amara now felt heavy against her own skin. The man's panicked denial, his haste to leave, it screamed of secrets. Shaking, Amara locked up the diner. Her usual closing routine performed on autopilot. Back in the quiet solitude of her apartment, the questions consumed her. Who was that man? Why did he possess such a personal photo of her mother? Why lie about it? The official story, a tragic, random car accident, suddenly felt thin, porous. Her first reaction was a maelstrom of emotions. Grief flooding back with unexpected intensity, confusion, anger at the man's deception. But overriding it all was a fierce, undeniable surge of need. She needed to know the truth. It felt less like a choice, more like a compulsion. The carefully compartmentalized doubts about her mother's death broke free. Her initial goal crystallized: find the man and demand answers. But how? He was a ghost, nameless, potentially powerful given his expensive attire and demeanor. Amara turned to the only tool readily available, her laptop. She started with the scant details. She had approximate age, distinguished appearance, likely wealthy, seen in her New Orleans neighborhood diner late on a specific Tuesday night. It was grasping at straws. Then she remembered something else, the briefest glimpse of a logo embossed on the man's wallet as he snatched it up. A stylized letter intertwined with a subtle energy symbol. She sketched it from memory, her analytical mind kicking in. She started searching online. Letter energy logo, wealthy businessman, New Orleans energy sector, philanthropist energy industry. Hours passed in a blur of fruitless searching. Discouragement began to set in. Was she chasing shadows based on a fleeting glimpse, fueled by grief? Just as she was about to give up, scrolling through images of corporate logos, she saw it. The exact symbol. Ellison Energy. A few more clicks revealed the CEO, Charles Ellison. Age mid-50s, salt and pepper hair, quiet demeanor noted in several business profiles. Photos matched the man from the diner. He was a major figure in the energy sector, based primarily in Houston, but with significant ties to Louisiana through offshore drilling and, more recently, renewable energy investments. A billionaire. Why would Charles Ellison, CEO of Ellison Energy, carry a worn photo of Evelyn Tate, a chemical engineer who died 14 years ago? The question was no longer formless. It had a name, a face, a corporation attached. Amara felt a chill despite the humid night. Her mother hadn't just been known by this man. She was somehow significant enough for him to carry her picture years after her death. Amara's resolve hardened. Finding him again wouldn't be easy, but it was no longer impossible. Her first tentative step would be to learn everything she could about Ellison Energy and Charles Ellison's history, searching for any connection, however faint, to Evelyn Tate. The mystery had a starting point, and Amara, armed with her laptop and a daughter's determination, was ready to pull the thread. Amara plunged into the digital rabbit hole of Charles Ellison and Ellison Energy. Corporate websites yielded polished PR, but little substance. Financial news archives detailed Ellison Energy's rise, its controversies, environmental lawsuits, lobbying efforts, and Charles Ellison's reputation as a shrewd but intensely private businessman. There was no mention of Evelyn Tate. Frustrated, Amara turned back to her mother's keepsake box. She carefully untied the ribbon around the bundle of letters, rereading pages filled with mundane details of daily life, technical jargon she didn't understand, and expressions of love for her young daughter. Then, she found it tucked within a seemingly innocuous letter discussing lab frustrations was a single sentence. Charles is pushing hard on the Aurora project deadline. Incredible pressure, but the battery prototype is finally showing promise. Another letter mentioned needing to talk to Charles about Victor's methods and feeling uneasy. Aurora Project, a name. Cross-referencing Ellison Energy Aurora Project yielded results. Archived press releases and tech articles from roughly 20 years ago described Aurora as an ambitious, heavily funded research initiative by Ellison Energy aimed at developing revolutionary clean energy storage, specifically a highly efficient organic-based battery. The project was heralded as visionary. Amara found grainy photos from an initial press conference. A younger Charles Ellison, beaming, standing beside Evelyn Tate, listed as lead research scientist, and another man identified as Victor Klein, project co-director and Ellison's partner at the time. Seeing her mother's name officially linked to Ellison solidified the connection. Then, the trail went cold. Further searches revealed the Aurora project was abruptly terminated about a year after the press conference, citing insurmountable technical challenges and withdrawal of secondary funding. There was little follow-up press. And then, the chilling discovery. Archived local news reports detailed Evelyn Tate's fatal single-car accident occurring less than 3 months after the project's termination date. The timing felt sinister. Amara felt a growing dread. Had her mother's accidental death been connected to the project's failure? She started searching for Victor Klein. He seemed to have dropped off the map after Aurora's collapse, eventually resurfacing years later as the founder of a smaller, moderately successful tech consulting firm, Klein Innovations, based out of Atlanta. Driven by a need for more personal insight, Amara searched online forums and professional networking sites like LinkedIn, looking for anyone who might have worked on the Aurora project. She found a few names, mostly junior researchers or technicians from 2 decades ago. She crafted careful, anonymous messages, posing as a student researching defunct clean energy projects, asking general questions about Aurora's goals and challenges. Most messages went unanswered. One former technician replied vaguely, mentioning bad blood between Ellison and Klein and rumors of stolen research, but offered no specifics. Then came the first real complication, an encrypted email from an anonymous source. Stop asking about Aurora. Some secrets are buried for a reason. Leave it alone if you value your safety. Fear prickled Amara's skin, but the warning only strengthened her resolve. Someone didn't want her looking into this. Days later, a second, more direct contact occurred. A phone call, caller ID blocked. A cold, male voice spoke. Amara Tate, this is a friendly warning. Your mother's past is none of your business. Drop it. When Amara demanded to know who was calling, the line went dead. She suspected it was Victor Klein, trying to intimidate her. She felt trapped. Charles Ellison wouldn't talk to her through official channels. Victor Klein was threatening her. She needed more leverage, more information. She considered trying to contact Ellison again, perhaps more directly, more confrontationally. She also redoubled her research into Victor Klein, looking for weaknesses, connections, anything that might explain his hostility and the project's demise. The quest for understanding her mother's past had become a dangerous investigation into potential corporate espionage and, terrifyingly, possible murder. Amara knew she couldn't let the threats deter her. The anonymous warnings, the phone call likely from Victor Klein, they confirmed she was circling a dangerous truth. She needed to confront Charles Ellison directly, force him to acknowledge more than just a past acquaintance. Getting through his corporate defenses had failed. She needed a different approach. Leveraging her research, she discovered Ellison was scheduled to give a keynote address at a renewable energy conference in New Orleans the following week. It was a long shot, but it was her only chance for an unscheduled, face-to-face encounter. She used most of her meager savings to buy a day pass to the conference, dressing professionally in clothes borrowed from a friend, hoping to blend in. The conference was held at a large downtown hotel, a world away from Mama Rosie's diner. Amara felt like an imposter amidst the swarm of industry professionals, academics, and investors. She located the main ballroom, where Ellison was scheduled to speak. After his address, a polished, forward-looking speech about the future of sustainable energy, he was briefly surrounded by admirers and reporters. Amara waited patiently, heart pounding, until the crowd thinned slightly. Taking a deep breath, she approached him as he was turning to leave with his security detail. "Mr. Ellison," she called out, her voice clear and steady, holding up a copy of the old press photo showing him, her mother, and Victor Klein at the Aurora project launch. "Mr. Ellison, we need to talk about Evelyn Tate. And about Victor Klein." Ellison stopped dead, his eyes locking onto the photograph, then onto Amara's face. Recognition warred with alarm. His security guards tensed, moving slightly towards her. "This isn't the time or place," Ellison said curtly, starting to move again. "Isn't it?" Amara persisted, stepping with him, keeping her voice low but intense. "My mother worked on your Aurora project. It collapses. She dies 3 months later in an accident. and now someone named Victor Klein is threatening me for asking questions. You knew her. You carried her picture. What happened, Mr. Ellison? Her directness, the mention of Klein's threat, seemed to break through his reserve. He gestured for his security to hold back, pulling Amara slightly aside into a less crowded alcove. His face was etched with a deep, weary guilt. It's complicated, he admitted, his voice barely above a whisper. Evelyn, her work was revolutionary. The battery technology, he hesitated, looking haunted. Victor saw its potential, its value. He wanted to sell it fast to the highest bidder. Evelyn refused. She believed it needed ethical development, safeguards. I sided with Victor initially, blinded by the potential profit. He paused, struggling. Victor pushed her out of the project, then sabotaged the final phase to cover his tracks, making it look like a technical failure. He likely stole the core research data. I suspected her accident wasn't accidental. But Victor threatened me, too. He implied that if I investigated, he'd release a flawed, dangerous version of the battery tech, or sell it to hostile actors. He said blood would be on my hands. I was a coward. I let him silence me. He looked down at the photo Amara still held. I carried her picture as penance. A reminder. This was the turning point. Hearing the truth, the betrayal, the likely murder, Charles's complicity through silence born of fear and greed hit Amara with the force of a physical blow. Grief, anger, and a sickening sense of disillusionment washed over her. Her mother hadn't just died. She'd been betrayed and likely killed for her brilliance, and this man had stood by. Amara's quest for understanding transformed into a burning need for justice. Your silence didn't protect anyone, Mr. Ellison, she said, her voice trembling with suppressed rage. It protected him. My mother deserves the truth. And Victor Klein needs to pay. Ellison looked shaken, meeting her gaze. He's dangerous, Amara. I know, she replied, her resolve hardening. But I won't be silenced like she was. I will find proof, and I will expose him. She turned and walked away, leaving Charles Ellison standing alone in the alcove, confronted by the ghost of his past actions. Amara now knew the core truth, the players and the motive. Her goal was no longer just to learn. It was to avenge her mother and bring Victor Klein down. The point of no return had been irrevocably crossed. Amara left the energy conference numb but resolute. Charles Ellison's confession, though partial and self-serving, confirmed her worst fears and solidified Victor Klein as the central villain. The grief was sharp, mingling with a cold anger towards both men, Victor for his actions, Charles for his inaction. Back in her small apartment, Amara knew she couldn't tackle Victor Klein alone. He was wealthy, ruthless, and had already proven willing to threaten her. Charles Ellison was unreliable, paralyzed by guilt and fear. She needed concrete evidence linking Victor not only to the theft of the battery technology, but, if possible, to her mother's death. She shifted her focus entirely to Victor Klein. Recalling Charles's admission that Victor likely stole the core research data, Amara theorized Victor might have tried to patent or develop aspects of the technology himself over the years through his company, Klein Innovations, or shell corporations. She spent days meticulously searching the U.S. Patent and Trademark Office database, cross-referencing technical specifications hinted at in her mother's old papers with patents filed by Klein or related entities. It was painstaking work, requiring her to rapidly learn complex technical language. She also reactivated her outreach, this time with more specific information. She contacted the few former Aurora project members she could trace, mentioning Victor Klein's potential theft of Evelyn Tate's battery research. This yielded a crucial lead. One retired engineer recalled Klein frequently accessing restricted server archives late at night shortly before the project collapsed, and remembered Klein having suspicious private meetings off-site. He also mentioned Klein had a reputation for cutting ethical corners. Amara realized she needed more than just technical data. She needed evidence of motive and action around the time of her mother's death. She hired a budget-friendly online investigation service, the best she could afford, to conduct deep background searches on Victor Klein, focusing specifically on the period surrounding the Aurora project termination and Evelyn's accident. She provided them with the dates and names. The intimidation tactics from Victor also escalated. One evening, she returned home to find her apartment door lock visibly tampered with, scratched and dented, though ultimately holding. Nothing inside seemed disturbed, but the message was clear: "I can get to you." The fear was real, making her jump at shadows, double-check locks, sleep lightly. She installed a security app on her phone that could record audio discreetly and send alerts, and began wearing the silver locket, which had a small, almost invisible clasp tucked inside her shirt, feeling a strange mix of connection and vulnerability. She considered going to the police, but with what? Charles Ellison's hesitant, uncorroborated admission, suspicions about a 20-year-old accident, threats from a block number. She knew she needed something solid. Amidst the investigation and fear, Amara wrestled with her feelings about Charles Ellison. Was he truly just a coward, or complicit in a deeper way? Could he be leveraged? She sent him a carefully worded email, not accusing, but stating facts. "Victor Klein is actively threatening me. I have evidence suggesting he stole my mother's research. Your silence enables him. Evelyn deserves justice." She included one piece of non-critical information she'd found linking Klein to a shell corporation, proving her investigation was progressing. The online investigation service delivered its report. While finding no direct link to the accident, it uncovered significant financial activity by Victor Klein in the months following Evelyn's death. Large, unexplained wire transfers from an offshore account associated with a known rival energy corporation. The one Charles suspected Victor sold the formula to, and the quiet purchase of Klein Innovations shortly thereafter. It was circumstantial, but painted a damning picture of motive and means. Amara now had patents potentially linked to the stolen tech, financial records suggesting payment, and escalating threats from Victor himself. The pieces were assembling, but the final link proof of his direct involvement in silencing Evelyn remained elusive. Armed with the patent connections, the financial records, and the knowledge of Victor Klein's escalating threats, Amara felt both empowered and terrified. The evidence was compelling, but largely circumstantial regarding her mother's death. She needed something more direct, something to force Victor's hand or expose him undeniably. Charles Ellison finally responded to her email, not with commitment, but with fear. He agreed to meet her discreetly, confessing that Victor had contacted him too, making veiled threats about exposing Charles's early complicity and ruining Ellison Energy if Charles didn't handle Amara. This confirmed Victor was feeling the pressure. Charles admitted he still possessed some encrypted digital records from the Aurora project era, backups he'd kept hidden, potentially containing communication between himself, Victor, and Evelyn. He hadn't dared access them in years, fearing digital traps left by Victor, but he offered them to Amara, transferring the encrypted files along with a warning: "Be careful, Amara. He might be monitoring your digital footprint." This was a major breakthrough, but also a huge risk. Amara knew she lacked the skills to safely decrypt and analyze the files without alerting Victor. She needed professional help. Remembering her mother's network, she searched university alumni databases and found Dr. Lena Hansen, a former colleague and noted cybersecurity expert Evelyn had occasionally mentioned in her letters. Taking a chance, Amara reached out, explaining her situation carefully, appealing to Dr. Hansen's memory of Evelyn. To Amara's immense relief, Dr. Hansen remembered Evelyn fondly and, angered by the story, agreed to help analyze the file securely, off-network. While Dr. Hansen worked, Victor Klein's intimidation reached a dangerous peak. He began appearing near the diner during Amara's shifts, sometimes sitting inside nursing a coffee, his eyes cold and watchful, other times simply parked across the street. His presence was a constant, unnerving threat. He sent her another message, this time with a picture of her apartment building attached. Last warning. Some accidents are easy to arrange. This direct threat galvanized Amara. She documented it, forwarding it to Charles as further proof of Victor's state of mind. She knew the confrontation was inevitable. Victor wouldn't stop until she was silenced or he was exposed. Dr. Hansen delivered her findings. The encrypted files contained fragmented email exchanges and project notes. While much was corrupted or deliberately obscured, Hansen recovered keywords and metadata confirming Victor's unauthorized data transfers around the time the project collapsed. More chillingly, she found fragments of emails where Victor pressured Evelyn to release proprietary details, followed by veiled threats when she refused. Most damningly, Hansen found a partially deleted audio file, a strained phone conversation between Victor and an unknown party recorded weeks after Evelyn's death, referencing loose ends, the tape problem being solved, and a generous payment for the trucking mishap. It wasn't a confession, but it was incredibly strong evidence suggesting the accident was staged. This was it. Amara had the motive, stolen tech, financial gain, the means, payments, suspicious circumstances, and now, near proof of intent and orchestration. But it still felt incomplete for a murder charge after 20 years. She needed Victor himself. Dark night. Amara felt the weight of the world. Victor knew she was close. The threat felt imminent. Could she truly face him? What if the recording failed? What if Charles didn't follow through? Fear warred with the image of her mother's stolen legacy, her stolen life. She clutched the silver locket, drawing strength from the memory of Evelyn's courage. She decided she had to confront Victor, to try and bait him into revealing something conclusive on tape. She sent Victor a message. We need to talk. About Aurora. About my mother. Meet me at the diner after closing tomorrow night. Come alone. She then contacted Charles, shared the audio fragment Dr. Hansen found, and detailed her plan, pleading with him to be nearby, ready to alert the authorities the moment he received her signal. For Evelyn, she urged. Charles, finally shaken from his paralysis by the concrete evidence and Amara's courage, agreed. The final showdown was set. The diner was closed, chairs stacked on tables, the only light coming from the dim glow behind the counter and the street lights outside filtering through the blinds. Amara waited, heart pounding, her waitress uniform feeling like inadequate armor. She had her phone set to record audio discreetly in her apron pocket, and her smartwatch prepped with a distress signal to Charles. Victor Klein arrived exactly on time, slipping through the side door Amara had left unlocked. He looked calm, almost smug, but his eyes darted around nervously. Bold move, Amara, he said, his voice low. Thinking you can dictate terms. I know what you did, Victor, Amara stated, keeping her voice steady despite the tremor in her hands. You stole my mother's work. The battery designs. You sold them. She presented a printed copy of one of the patent filings she believed used Evelyn's core concepts. Victor laughed, a dry, humorless sound. Prove it. Evelyn was brilliant, but unstable. Couldn't handle the pressure. Tragique accident. It wasn't an accident, Amara pressed, stepping closer, reciting fragment from the recovered audio file. The tape problem solved. Generous payment for the trucking mishap. Sound familiar? Victor's eyes widened, then narrowed into slits of fury. The smugness vanished, replaced by cold rage. You little bitch. You couldn't leave it alone. He lunged forward, not with a knife, but grabbing her arm hard, twisting it behind her back, shoving her against the counter. You think you're smarter than me? Than Ellison? He folded like cheap suit. Your mother was arrogant, thought her ethics mattered more than progress, more than profit. He spat the words near her ear. She wouldn't cooperate, so she was removed. And now you. His rant, fueled by rage and panic, was exactly what Amara needed. He hadn't confessed to murder explicitly, but admitting Evelyn was removed for not cooperating, combined with the audio fragment, was damning. As his grip tightened painfully, Amara cried out, simultaneously triggering the distress signal on her watch. Within moments, the diner door burst open. Charles Ellison stood there, phone pressed to his ear, flanked by two uniformed New Orleans police officers he'd evidently brought directly, bypassing a delayed 911 response. Police! Let her go, Klein, one officer commanded. Victor whirled around, momentarily stunned, his grip loosening just enough for Amara to wrench free. Seeing the officers, the fight drained out of him, replaced by panicked realization. He raised his hands slowly. Amara, breathing heavily, backed away, clutching her phone, the recording secure. The officers moved in, handcuffing a sputtering, suddenly powerless Victor Klein. Charles met Amara's tear-filled gaze across the room, a look of profound relief and shame passing between them. Victor Klein's arrest, fueled by Amara's recording of his incriminating statements and threats, combined with the digital evidence recovered by Dr. Hansen and Charles Ellison's corroborating testimony about the original theft and subsequent cover-up, led to a high-profile trial. While proving murder definitively after 20 years remained challenging, the evidence was overwhelming for charges of conspiracy, corporate espionage, fraud, extortion, and assault. Victor received a lengthy prison sentence, ensuring he wouldn't harm anyone else. The trial brought Evelyn Tate's story to light, her brilliance, her integrity, and the injustice she suffered. Charles Ellison faced public scrutiny for his years of silence, but earned a measure of redemption through his cooperation and testimony. He issued a formal public apology, acknowledging his failure to protect Evelyn and prevent the theft of her work. True to his word, Charles established the Evelyn Tate Energy Initiative, a well-funded foundation dedicated to supporting ethical research in renewable energy and providing substantial STEM scholarships, particularly for women of color from disadvantaged backgrounds, mirroring Evelyn's own journey. He asked Amara to serve as the foundation's executive director. After careful consideration, she accepted, seeing it as the best way to honor her mother's legacy on a larger scale. Amara's life transformed. She left the diner, though she often visited Mama Rosie, who had become like family. She pursued her education with renewed vigor, now funded by a scholarship in her mother's name. Leading the foundation gave her purpose, allowing her to champion the values her mother stood for. She used her position and a portion of a significant civil settlement she won against Victor Klein's assets to fund educational programs in her old neighborhood, ensuring other children had opportunities she and her mother fought hard for. One quiet afternoon, Amara stood before a display honoring her mother at the foundation's launch event. She wore the silver locket, no longer just a keepsake, but a symbol of resilience. Charles Ellison stood beside her. "She will be incredibly proud of you, Amara," he said softly. Tears welled in Amara's eyes, tears not just of sorrow, but of release, of justice finally served, of connection to the mother whose face she first rediscovered in his wallet. "I just wanted to find her," Amara whispered. But instead, I found her legacy and my own voice. From a single photograph and a daughter's persistent love, the truth had emerged, painful, but ultimately powerful, paving the way for healing and a brighter future built on the sparks of Evelyn's brilliance.